Assembly of DNA into chromosomes. The basic understanding with this is that a linear DNA can be packaged to a very condensed form, which we know as chromosomes, and inevitably we relate chromosomes with a cell that is dividing, because when a cell moves from interphase to the mitosis phase, one would observe that the DNA would gradually compact itself to come to chromosome form, and at the metaphase stage, the DNA is the most condensed. So, this session is basically to understand or to get an overview of how a linear DNA can get packaged into a chromosome. Now, this is definitely an overview, because when one wants and wishes, one can go into depths of looking at how many different proteins or how many different processes by which you have DNA packaging into chromosomes. Here in this session, we are only going to look at the main proteins, the main complexes that are involved and help in the DNA to package into chromosomes. So let us look at the learning outcomes of the session. A single linear DNA can get packaged into a chromosome during cell division. Packaging of DNA is dependent on the phase of cell cycle in which the cell is. The DNA interacts with histones to form chromatin, which in turn enables the genome to be present within the compact nucleus. So the basic understanding is that DNA is never present in the naked form. To be present in the nucleus itself, it has to get into a certain level of compaction, and so the least condensed form of the DNA is the chromatin, and it can exist in the small space of the nucleus that is present within a cell. Now, it is the histones, which are basic proteins that form the basic unit of chromosomes, which is the nucleosome. So the histones come together to form a particle, a core particle, that is called as the nucleosome core particle. The chromatin can be further packaged into solenoids, or what is called as the 30 nanometer fiber, and thereafter to the metaphase scaffold structure, that means to the chromosome. So modifications, it has been observed that the histone tails, so there is the nucleosomes, the histones of the nucleosomes have their N-terminal end extending out from the globular compact particle, and these tails have been observed to influence DNA packaging. Therefore, this becomes a point of regulation, which can thereby influence processes like replication, transcription, etc. So when you have a DNA in a more compact form, it is understandable that the sites to which the replisome machinery or the sites to which the transcriptome machinery binds would be inaccessible if the DNA is compact. So in order for transcription or replication to happen, the condensed DNA has to get a little decondensed. So therefore, there would be a lot of molecules involved to enable this process to happen. So therefore, there is a point of regulation involved with this entire DNA packaging mechanism. Now, let us basically look at the chromatin, which is the first level of condensation that the DNA goes through. Say, for example, you have a linear DNA, which is not bound to any protein, so it is not it is completely in an uncondensed form. The first level of condensation is what we call as a bead in a string structure. So it is very clear that every bead, okay, is wrapping around or is wrapping around itself the DNA. So one may see that the DNA actually coils around every bead. You see, the DNA is coiling around every bead. So therefore, obviously what is happening is, because the DNA is coiling around one bead, the DNA which would otherwise be long is now coiled. So therefore, you can see a certain level of packaging that is happening. So as many number of nucleosomes bound to the DNA, that much packaging would happen, and the DNA looks like a bead in a string structure. So the DNA that is wrapping around one nucleosome, and this bead is what is called as the nucleosome core particle, or what is called as the nucleosome. And every nucleosome is responsible for the first condensation. Therefore, a nucleosome is considered to be the unit of chromosome. Now, the core DNA, okay, or the DNA that is wrapped around the nucleosome is called the core DNA. Here it is interesting to note that the interaction of the nucleosome to the DNA is more non-specific in nature than specific, although there are several reports that have suggested that the assembly of the nucleosomes on the DNA at some specific sequences are more often seen than in other sequences, but the basic interaction that happens between the nucleosome and the DNA is due to the positive charge that is present on the nucleosome, because the nucleosome is made up of histones. Histones are basic proteins and therefore they have a plus charge, while the DNA has a sugar phosphate backbone which gives it an overall negative charge. So the interaction purely is between the positive charge of the histones in the nucleosomes and the negative charge of the DNA. So that interaction brings it together. But what is interesting is that for every DNA that is coiled around the nucleosome, the DNA makes about 14 contacts with the histone octamer. Now, this suggests that there are 8 histones that form one nucleosome. So it is basically an octamer that is forming the entire nucleosome core particle. And in this, what you also observe is certain extensions. So these extensions are what are called as histone tails. And these histone tails have a role to play in the coiling of the DNA around the nucleosome per se. So you must understand that every part of the nucleosome has a specific binding affinity for the DNA, and because it can bind to the DNA, it is able to form the chromatin. Now, the DNA that is present within two or between two nucleosomes or between two beads is what is called as the linker DNA. Now, when one basically, acha, you have a condensed DNA that can be decondensed by treating it with salt, etc. So when you have the bead in the string structure, and when this bead in the string structure, that is the chromatin, is exposed to nucleases, okay, so the first experiment, the experimental evidence of the fact that there is a bead in the string structure was found by treating the chromatin with nucleases, and that too derived from micrococcus. So it's basically a micrococcus nuclease that was used. The most important part of this experimentation was to actually find out the length of the core DNA. That means how much base pair of DNA is wrapped around the nucleosome. So effectively what we understand is if the linker DNA parts are not bound to by any proteins and they are exposed, then the nucleases will be able to go and cut at these sites. So therefore every nucleosome will be present with the wrapped DNA. Okay, now when you have every nucleosome with the wrapped DNA present, and if you dismantle the nucleosome by treating it with different salt concentration and you get just this DNA fragment, the first finding was that it is about 200 base pair long DNA. How do you know that it is 200 base pair long DNA? You can find out the size by running it on an gel electrophoresis with a molecular weight marker. So, but further studies showed that when you allow the entire linker DNA to be digested by a nuclease such that only the portion that is wrapped around the DNA is not being cleaved or it is not being removed by the micrococcus nuclease. Why? Because the DNA is protected by the nucleosome, and so the nuclease is not able to cut the DNA that is wound around, completely wound around. It was found that the exact number of base pairs that is wrapped around the nucleosome is about 146 to 147 base pair. Now, on further studies, it was found that the wrapping around or the coiling of the DNA around the nucleosome is basically the left-handed supercoils, and this left-handed supercoil, so it was found that about the DNA was making about 1.65 turns around the nucleosome, and the DNA was observed to enter and exit from the same region, okay, from the same point. This was an interesting find as well. So it you can find that every this thing, if it enters the coil here, it comes out from here. If it enters the coil here, it comes out from here. So the entry point and the exit point was the same for the coiled DNA. The dimensions of the nucleosomes were found to be, so the nucleosome core particle itself was having a dimension of about 10 nanometers by 11 nanometers, and therefore this chromatin is also called as the 11 nanometer fiber. So every 11 nanometer core particle will have a 146 147 base pair long core DNA, and the linker DNA was found to be anywhere between 10 to 80 base pair long. Okay, so at some regions it is just about 50 base pair, at other regions it can be about 80 base pair. So the size of the linker DNA can vary. Okay, this is another explanation to the fact that the binding of the nucleosome to the DNA is not sequence specific. Okay, it is non-sequence specific, and the linker DNA size can vary all through the packaged chromatin. So, having done all the study, what was observed is that the chromatin is packaged further than the naked DNA, and the packing ratio is about 7. What is packing ratio? The total length of DNA by the length of DNA in the packaged form. Okay, so therefore it was found that that ratio is coming to about 7, and this is what the first level of condensation is. Now let us look at a little more on the nucleosome itself. So the nucleosome is made up of 4 basic proteins called the histones, and it is H2A, H2B, H3 and H4 that come together to finally form the nucleosome. But it is 4 proteins, but it is an octamer. So therefore the clear understanding is that there are there are 2 components of each that will form the entire octamer. So H3 2, H4 2 components, H2A 2 components, and H2B 2 components. Together they will form an octamer. But interestingly, what has been observed is that when these histones are synthesized in the cytoplasm itself, it has been observed that the H3 specifically interacts with the H4 to form the dimer, and the H2A interacts with H2B to form the H2A H2B dimer. So it is first dimerized into heterodimer. So this is a heterodimer comprising H3H4. This is another heterodimer comprising H2A H2B. Then it is observed that the H3H4 dimers, 2 dimers come together to form an H3H4 tetramer. And this H3H4 tetramer is the nucleation point for the 2 coils of the DNA around. So you can observe that once you have the H3H4 tetramer formed, the DNA can already start winding around it. So you can already have contacts made by the DNA, and you will have that the supercoils of the DNA are being formed even before the H2A H2B are actually binding. So thereafter what happens is that the H2H2B dimers also come one after the other and complete the octamer. Eventually what you have is the nucleosome core particle, okay, is wound or is winding around it about 1.65 turns of the DNA, and so that DNA is what is called as the core DNA. So just going through again, the nucleosome DNA complex is stable because the DNA makes about 14 contacts with the nucleosome per se, and these, of course, although the 14 contacts are not covalent linkages, but the linkages that are made because of the ionic interactions and hydrogen bonding, etc. And therefore, those interactions stabilize the nucleosome DNA complex that is formed. So basically, you can say that chromatin is a stable conformation of the DNA, and it is a higher order conformation of DNA. But you must understand that the nucleosome itself is not static. What do we mean by that? It means that once a nucleosome has been assembled, it can be disassembled again, and after disassembly, it can reassemble again. And that's why it is said that the nucleosome is a highly dynamic complex in itself. And this assembly and disassembly of the nucleosome is regulated by various other non-histone protein complexes. And this is an important phenomenon, especially associated with decondensation of DNA for enabling replication or transcription to happen. Because if you have a promoter present in a region here which is associated with nucleosome, then an RNA polymerase does not get access to this promoter. So if the nucleosome from this point is dismantled, then the promoter will be accessible to the RNA polymerase. So such regulations where if one has to have a promoter getting accessibility to the RNA polymerase to get transcribed, it has to be regulated. And so one must understand that the formation of the chromatin in itself is able to kind of decide which genes are going to be expressed and which genes are not going to be expressed. And when you have the DNA going to even more higher order structures, then the gene expressions are definitely going to become lesser and lesser with more and more compaction of the DNA. Let us understand the structure of the histones itself. So what has been found is whether you have H3, H4 or whether you have the H2A, H2B, all of these basic core histones, they're called core histones because they are forming the nucleosome core particle. And all these histone cores have a very typical conserved motif, a supersecondary structure motif, and this motif enables it to interact with each other in the first place. And secondly, because of the way the motif is formed, you also have the N-terminal regions extending as histone tails. And so both histone tails and the conserved histone fold help in actually forming the nucleosome core particle, and the histone tails themselves are highly dynamic, as we will see in some time. The histone fold contains 3 alpha helices. So if you consider this is alpha 1, this is alpha 2, and this is alpha 3. So there are 3 helices in the supersecondary structure of the histone core, which is called as the histone fold. Alpha 1 is connected to alpha 2 through a loop which is called as L1, and alpha 2 is connected to alpha 3 through another loop which is called as L2. So together the two L1, L2 and the 3 alpha helices are forming what is called as the histone fold, and this is a highly conserved motif. So the heterodimer that is formed is also because of interaction between the histone folds itself. So the histone fold of H3 interacts with the histone fold of the H4. Okay, and there can be several different types of interactions, right from van der Waals to hydrogen bonding to ionic interactions. So also another important thing that happens when a dimer is formed is that the L1 of one of the histones, okay, comes together with the L2 of the other histone. So if this is H3, then L1 of H3, L1 of the histone fold of the H3 is interacting with the L2 of the histone fold of the H4, and together they form a kind of connect, and this is called also as a handshake motif. And so therefore this becomes an important point of dimerization. But what is more interesting is that these L1, L2 regions, okay, of the heterodimers are able to interact with DNA, plus the alpha 1 helices itself, okay, are able to interact with the DNA. So the points of association of DNA with the histones are through L1, L2, that is the handshake motif itself, and the alpha 1 helix of the histone folds. Now, what is observed is when you have the H3, H4 tetramer acting as a nucleation for the DNA to form the coils around it, you can see how the DNA enters from here, forms one turn, and then goes out from here, right? So this is what is happening. So you will find that the entry point and the exit point is in this area, and when you have this nucleation formed, you already have this coil, left-handed coil being formed. So here is where you will have the H2A and H2B coming and assembling to complete the nucleosome. Now when you draw a line of symmetry through this point, even the DNA basically is divided into two halves of symmetry, and of course the nucleosomes are divided into two halves of symmetry already. So therefore this is called as a dyad symmetry of the nucleosome core particle, with all the nucleosome bound to the core DNA is itself. Now what is interesting to note also is that the H3 tail comes out or extends out at the dyad region, or at the region where you have the entry and the exit point, and these H3 tails which are having basic amino acids are able to interact with the linker DNA. So they can also interact with the linker DNA, or they have the propensity to bind to the DNA again. And also what is understood is that the coiling of the DNA itself is thanks to this H3 tails, and also the H4 for that matter, binding to the DNA. So the coiling initiating at the nucleation region is thanks to the extensions of the nucleosome core particles in the form of the histone tails. Looking at the histone tails in a little more detail, um, when you have the octamer present, you have the N terminus of H2A, N terminus of the H2B, H3 and H4 extending out of the nucleosome octamer. And interesting to notice that these histone tails are actually regions of several post-translational modifications. That means that different amino acid residues, you can have different chemical groups being added. So what can happen is methylation, so methyl groups can be added, phosphorylation, phosphate groups can be added to, say for example, serine residues or tyrosine residues. Acetylation is also possible at lysines. Deacetylation, so if you have already an acetyl group added to a lysine, the acetyl can be removed, or you can have ubiquitin coming and binding as well. Now, it has been found to be more in the histone tails, but then it also is able to carry out, so there are post-translational modifications also happening within the nucleosome octamer itself. Now, these all is possible because, okay, one observation is that the histone tails are highly rich in lysine residue, as depicted by K. You can see K here, K here, K here, K here, and K here. Similarly, if you look at this, you have several regions where you have the K, and this lysine residue is a point where you have lots of modifications taking place, methylation, acetylation, all of these take place at the lysine residues, other than of course serine and tyrosines and arginines. But interesting to note is this, that these histone tails, which are rich in lysine, okay, the lysine being basic amino acid has a positive charge, and therefore the histone tails are able to interact with the DNA through the minor groove. So the non-sequence specific interaction of the histone or the nucleosome with the DNA is thanks to the interaction being initiated by the histone tails itself, and that is happening because the histone tails are rich in lysine and arginine, more in lysine than arginine. But what is also interesting to notice that all these post-translational modifications can initiate formation of a higher order DNA structure and also gene regulation. That means the modifications on the histone tails can decide whether a gene is going to get expressed or not going to get expressed. What is also interesting with respect to the histone tails is something called histone code. Now, you would have observed that this histone tail, okay, has at specific residues certain modifications happening. Now, suppose for example, you have this P and the acetyl groups at fifth lysine, at the ninth lysine, at the 13th lysine, at the 15th lysine, okay, when you have that with the serine number 2 or the serine number 1 being phosphorylated, then this modification may lead to the histone tail binding to some other proteins or binding to the DNA in a specific way. Suppose you remove this acetyl group and this acetyl group, now you're left with one phosphorus, one and two acetyl, where earlier you had four acetyl groups and one phosphate. So when you have four acetyl groups and one phosphate, that is one code. When you have two acetyl groups and one phosphate, that can be a second code. Similarly, when you have methyl groups along with acetyl groups at specific amino acid residues, this can be another code. So, at the histone tails, depending on where the modification has happened and how many modifications have happened, you can have different histone codes possible, and each histone code is a signal or is a code that allows binding of the nucleosome to other non-histone proteins or to the DNA itself. So this becomes therefore again another reason why regulation is important. Now, before we go into it, say for example you have most of the lysine residues acetylated. So the acetyl end is COCH3. CH3 makes it non-polar. If you did not have acetyl over here, then all the lysines will have positive charge. But when acetyl binds, the positive charge is gone because now you have the COCH3 bound and it becomes non-polar. In such a scenario, this tail's affinity to bind to the DNA will become lesser. But if these were all deacetylated, then this tail's affinity to bind to the DNA will be more because there are more positive charges. So therefore, you can understand that if you want the DNA to compact or to wind around the nucleosome, it would better be if the lysines are positively charged and not acetylated. So what is the indication here? The indication is if the lysine residues are acetylated, then the DNA is loosely bound around the nucleosome particle because the interaction of the histone tail to the DNA is less. Affinity with which can bind to the DNA tail is less. So it will be less compact than when you have no acetyl groups present. So that way, methyl group will influence, a phosphate group will influence the binding of the DNA with the uh, nucleosome particle per se. Now let us go to the next level of condensation. So where chromatin is going to condense further to form what is called as a 30 nanometer fiber, and many a times it is also called as the solenoid form. Now this is what the solenoid form looks like. So as you can see over here, you can have six core nucleosome particles with the core DNA coming into a loop, and this loop looks like a solenoid. So therefore it is called as solenoid, and the dimension of this is when all the six nucleosomes are present with the DNA, the dimension is 30 nanometers, and so therefore this is called as a 30 nanometer fiber. So you're basically looking at, this is one, you can have the second, you can have the third, you can have the fourth, and that is how the entire structure becomes a 30 nanometer fiber. But what has been also observed is that it is not necessary that the DNA be in the solenoid form. You can have one nucleosome to the other nucleosome. So you have this kind of a structure, you see, this kind of a structure. So this is more of a zigzag form, okay? And this, whether it is solenoid or whether it is the zigzag form, it is being formed because of histone 1 coming and binding to the entry and exit point of the DNA. Around a nucleosome, we know that the entry of the DNA and the exit of the DNA is at the same site. So when the histone comes and binds over here, it is actually tightening the loop, okay? And therefore, that kind of enables to form the higher order chromatin structure, higher order DNA structure. So say for example, this is the single nucleosome with the DNA wrapped around it. The histone will come and bind over here just like a necktie, and this loop is going to become tightened. okay, more compact and tighten. So two models have been proposed for the solenoid formation. One, as we mentioned, is the zigzag 30 nanometer fiber, and of course, you have the solenoid 30 nanometer fiber. So the histone 1 binds specifically to the linker DNA, and when it binds to the linker DNA, it covers around 20 base pair more. So with the histone 1, what one observes is 197 base pair of DNA is actually covered up by the core and the histone 1. The zigzag form has been observed to be a more preferred form, and this solenoid or the 30 nanometer fiber, the packing ratio becomes about 40. So you can see how chromatin, which was having a packing ratio of 70, is getting condensed further to have a packing ratio of 40. Just to remind you, packing ratio is the total length of DNA by the length of the DNA in the packaged structure. A little detailing on the solenoid form itself, you can see how you have the core, particle. You have the DNA coming from here, taking one round and going out over here. These are the linker DNA. Okay. The histone 1 per se has three domains. So it has a globular domain. Okay. This is called as a GH1 domain, and it has the C terminal and the N terminal domain, and the C terminal and N terminal are extended away from the globular domain. So the GH1 domain binds to both the linker DNA as well as to the dyad nucleosome dyad. So this domain of the H1 is able to link all the three parts, that is the linker DNA parts which are coming in and out, and also the nucleosome dyad. So this is how it becomes. So when it becomes this, you can see how the structure becomes more compact and rigid. But when you don't have the histone, you can see how it opens up and therefore it becomes more flexible. So obviously the understanding is that the binding of the H1 is going to make the DNA more compact and rigid. The C and the N terminal, of course, they are rich in lysine and arginine, and therefore they can bind easily to the linker DNA, and that too with high affinity. Therefore, it can form the compact and the rigid structure. Interestingly, what has been observed is that the way the histone 1 is bound to the linker DNA also decides two other things. One, suppose this is the GH1 domain and this is the C terminal domain. The C terminal domain having the lysine arginine, and therefore there is a net positive charge on the C terminal domain. Suppose you have the histone 1 binding in such a way that this C terminal domain is associated with the tail part. Let us call this as the tail part, and let us call this as the head part. Okay. So this is associated with this is associated with this is associated with this, correct? So therefore, what is observed is that you have this being associated with this. So basically you have dinucleosome being formed over here. So every particle, every condensation has been happening in a dinucleosome form. This is one repeat, this is the second repeat, this is the third repeat, this is the fourth repeat, and so on and so forth. Okay, but when you have the C terminal domains of adjacent uh, H1 coming together, okay, or facing each other, so when it is head to head, then what is happening is these two are interacting and these two are interacting as well. For this, it is these two interacting and these two interacting. So this becomes a tetranucleosome. And so what you observe is a tetranucleosome is being repeated. So you can either have a dinucleosome repeat or you can have a tetranucleosome repeat, depending on whether the histones are linking with each other head to tail or head to head. Okay, so that is another interesting facet associated with the solenoid form. Now we go to how solenoid gets further condensed into chromosomes. So you can see that this is what you observe at the metaphase stage, and there are several different proposals by lieu of which it has been said that DNA is condensed in a certain way. So when you look at this structure, which is the bead in the string structure, the linker DNA, as you can see, is the naked DNA. Otherwise, you have the DNA wrapped around. When this further folds, you have the solenoid form, and this solenoid then keep folding onto each other to form what is a hierarchical folding, and that hierarchical folding is what you see in the final chromosome. But there are other models that propose, and these are the most common models that have been most uh, prevalent models that have been proposed by scientists across the world. The other one is that the solenoids itself come to form loops, and every loop is attached to each other through certain protein complexes. And these protein complexes, in fact, come together to form what is called as a scaffold. So, when you look at the chromosome structure, when you look at a higher resolution of this, you will find that you have looped DNA with every loop bound to a scaffold that is made up of different proteins. There are lots of evidences for metaphase scaffold. When in this unit they found that the scaffold definitely is present, and these scaffolds are actually formed by certain proteins which are called as condensins. Here we look at one condensin. There are different types of condensins present. Now, condensin per se, when you look at most of the condensins, you will find that a condensin is made up of 5 different proteins. So, it has 2 SMC proteins. So, SMC is those proteins that can maintain the structure of chromosome. Therefore, structural maintenance of chromosome protein. It has the ATPase activity. So you see the looping of the solenoids is will require a certain amount of energy, and therefore this will have to hold on to a solenoid. So therefore it will open and close on a solenoid. It has one region which is called as the clasin, and 2 subunits which have a conserved sequence of amino acid of histidine, glutamic acid, alanine, and threonine. So these have this conserved sequence, and together all of these three helps in forming the chromosome axis. So when required, the chromosome axis can be disassembled, and when required, the chromosome axis can be assembled again. So therefore, the condensins seem to play a very important role in formation of the chromosome, such a way that a scaffold is formed. Along with condensin 1, you also have other non-histone proteins like, for example, TOPO2, TOPO2, or and of course, cohesins also play an important role, because the cohesins actually initially early prophase stage bring 2 homologous chromosomes together. But the final condensation is definitely because of condensin molecules. Now, therefore, what is observed is when 2 sister chromatids come together, it is because of tethering by the cohesin. Then the condensin molecules come in, and you can see how the chromatin is actually further getting looped out, right? Then you have the condensin one coming, and further loop within a loop is being formed. So therefore, it will become more and more condensed because of the binding of the condensin 2 and the condensin 1. So these are certain studies that have been carried out, and this is specifically associated when the nuclear envelope breakdown happens as the cell moves from prophase to the pro-metaphase stage. So in the pro-metaphase stage, you can see how highly condensed the DNA is. So you can see it was uncondensed, and then it becomes to a condensed form. The packing ratio of the chromosome is about 1,000. So you can see how from a naked DNA, you have slowly and gradually the DNA becoming more and more packaged. When the packing ratio is 1,000, you will not find the genes being expressed at all. So with higher compaction, the gene expression will definitely become negligible. So let us make the conclusions. The first level of packaging of DNA forms chromatin, which is the supercoiling of DNA around nucleosomes that are octamers of histones. The packing ratio is about 6 to 7 when it forms the chromatin, which is the first level of packaging of DNA. The histone 1, which is the linker histone, is responsible for formation of the next higher level DNA structure known as 30 nanometer fiber, and this in itself has a packing ratio of about 40. So first level to second level, you can already see the packing ratio is increasing by about 5 to 6 folds. Further packaging of DNA is aided by condensins and many other non-histone proteins, which loop the 30 nanometer fiber further to get to a packaging ratio of about 1000. And that is basically the chromosome at the pro-metaphase stage. There are several other non-histone proteins that are helping in forming the chromosomes, and this process is a regulated process with several proteins utilizing ATP. Thus, DNA packaging is a sequential process that makes the DNA more compact as the cell moves into cell division. Moreover, DNA condensation also influences gene expression, and hence regulation of DNA packaging is an important phenomenon. Thank you.